Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Stay with Azhar and Amir. We've got some really exciting developments for you coming today.
Yeah, pleasure to see you all again. If you haven't already, please do subscribe because I think it's important to have like that consistency of viewing it week on week. And yeah, looking forward to answering your questions.
Now, on this week's show, on this week's show, there's going to be a slight difference than there is normally, in the sense that we're going to have a second for your questions. So if you have a question, please put them down in the comments below, and we'll be able to try and answer those questions as we're going along.
Hi guys.
Hey Fabian, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Hey man.
Doing really well, thank you. Fabian, what do you want to talk about today?
Sorry?
What did you want to talk about today?
I wanted to talk about a bit of help with my resume. So my situation right now is basically I just graduated high school and I'm going to start study accounting and finance in September. And with all the internships, spring week, summer internships, etc. that's coming then, I think I really need to brush up my resume a bit because I don't have that much experience and I'm not 100% sure what to put into my resume then.
So first off, I think it's incredible that this early on in the process, you're looking into this stuff. Like a lot of people, they only start thinking about their resumes, you know, like in year 2, for example, and when they're thinking of applying. So you're ahead of the curve straight away, you know? I also think it's important to know that like, I think this is a very similar situation that a lot of people will be going through. So I think this can be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So let me just bring it up right now. Now, whilst you guys have a moment to digest Fabian's resume, I think, Fabian, why don't you talk us through just verbally what you did? You pick one of these experiences and just talk us through it very briefly.
Okay, probably the most relevant one is the internship I did at a marketing consultancy firm. So basically what I did there was I was on a team who helped different clients across various sectors. And I helped create presentations for like introduction to new employees, introduction to prospecting potential clients or customers for those companies. And I also created databases for potential marketing channels, such as in different magazines, etc., just the contact numbers, prices, how large of a pitch you could get in. So that's basically what I did there, just as get some experience as consulting for clients.
Okay, awesome. And Fabian, I was going to ask you a question, but I'll need to answer it later. Can you just think for a moment what, in your opinion, was the most impressive thing that you did whilst you were on this internship?
Well, I managed to, for the marketing purpose of a client who they're called Grundfos. It's basically like pipes. I got to look into and research which marketing channels would be the best for them. So I looked into where they used to market before, where they had the most success. And then I decided, I don't have the exact figures in my head, but I looked into previous return on investments and I figured out that magazines was the best for them, like digital, etc. just wasn't right for that sector. And then I decided that magazines were the best, most profitable one for them. And then I looked into different magazines that had kind of their target group as readers. And I looked into different prices, reach of those magazines, etc. And then
Okay, cool. Can I just stop you there? Azhar, do you want to take it away and we'll come back to that point, Fabian, in just a second.
So a couple of things, Fabian. What you just mentioned is like some really, really impressive stuff that you did in regards to, you know, identifying new channels for your clients, for example. So you want to make sure that you provide all of that value within your bullet points. Okay. So instead of just saying, you know, that you created presentations for various clients, I would mention, you know, you helped build onboard decks for clients and like mention how big the clients were, you know, like roughly in size.
Yeah.
On onboarding and CSR work, for example. And then also talk about the impact that you had there. In regards to this, what you mentioned about channels, mention how many new channels that you helped develop for how many different clients, for example. With the Excel stuff, like I would move that down and just put that into your like skills and abilities, for example, but try and condense what you mentioned here and like identified new channels for marketing opportunities for clients between this range and this range, increasing like I don't know, like the user base by this much, for example, and then try and quantify that if possible.
Okay.
So let me go a bit broader and talk about this in general. The first thing I would love to do is let's change this and let's change work experience and put work experience leadership as one thing. So call it work experience and leadership. And because this, for example, right here is super impressive, but I have to scroll down quite a way before I get there. So what I do first of all is shift, try and put this into one category that kind of makes sense. And let's shift this as high as we can, because I love this challenge. I think it's amazing. I think you talk a lot about it and like the techniques you used, how you did it, how you approached it, how you learned. And as a young person, this impresses me so much, as opposed to like, some random internship potentially where you just use PowerPoint and Excel. So let's shift these together and move that up top. The other thing I kind of want to briefly mention is I love the LSE, great stuff. Your grades are fantastic. So that's really good to point out. Again, first unit of students history. Tell me how big your cohort is. If you have a school of like just 30 kids in each cohort, that is less impressive to me than 120, for example. So I want it to be quantified. The next thing, again, similar with this, I think it's a bit wordy. So, just change something like best in school award for economics and put in brackets, how many people you beat out or, selected for or, given the prestigious prize or something like that to big yourself up just a little bit more, because that's really impressive. But I want to know more information about that. If as in kind of, I want it to be bigged up a little bit.
Absolutely.
A few additional things to add. So tell me a bit about your work as in telemarketing at Friendly Call.
Well, that was basically before I started high school, and it was a summer job to have something to do during the summer, get some money in. So it was basically just prospecting potential clients and also current clients, try to get them to continue their subscriptions, or when that was done, then just prospect potential clients and try to get them to sign a subscription.
Okay, so that sounds really good, actually. So what you're doing is you're prospecting for new clients, and then I want you to mention how many new clients and how much revenue you brought in as a result of those new subscriptions. Okay. And then you were also responsible for widening the existing base of clients, and you can talk about how you optimize the existing base to bring in, I don't know, 30% more revenue from your existing client base. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically here, I think you're really underselling yourself. The way that you can really sell it in that, the increase you had, how much you went through, how you understood people and how you're able to sell to people. Because, if you're applying for a banking, sales and trading job, for example, the kind of techniques and stuff you want to talk about here can be really applicable.
Okay. Yeah. Like they want to know that you're able to optimize, the existing client base for revenue, and that you can also bring in new clients. I would love to know that, right? And additionally, like when you mention that you won Seller of the Month, mention, how many people were competing there, for example, and how much you brought in, within that time frame. Or like how many more sales you did than, the average, for example. These are all really, really interesting quantifying figures. The last thing, well, two things I'd say. I would suggest moving your experience as a football coach into your extracurriculars.
Okay.
And as Amir mentioned, moving the London Institute of Banking up slightly.
Yep.
And last thing is, I would remove the references for requests at the bottom, I think, yeah. Like if they want your references, like they know that when they ask you that they expect you to provide. So generally speaking, it's better not to include that.
Okay.
Do you have any final questions? Anything you kind of want to talk about or go over?
No, I think that was really comprehensive and a lot of help, especially like quantifying everything down. I know I need to work on that. And especially the telemarketing part. I guess in my mind, it was just like a summer job that doesn't really improve my resume. But in the way I could quantify it, like you say, it could actually really improve the resume. So greatly appreciated.
No worries. And I mean, the thing I had to say is a lot of people will not have that much experience. So you coming into this with the grades that you have and some of the experience you've done will put you in a really good stead for those spring weeks. They're not expecting a huge amount and you're giving them quite a lot.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it very much, guys. Thank you a lot.
No worries. Awesome.
Yeah, last thing, Fabian. When I applied for spring weeks actually in first year, I had something similar to you with the telemarketing thing. And that was one of the reasons I was able to get the spring weeks I did, was because I talked about how I did in comparison with other people. I talked about how I increased like the revenue base. So definitely do focus on that as like in quantifying, because it'll really make you go far in those spring weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. It's been really helpful. I appreciate it a lot.
No worries at all, man. Hope we see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you again. Bye.
All right, awesome. So quick reminder that if you've got any questions generally, put them in the chat because we have a little segment. We do indeed answer some of your questions live.
Yep, we're just waiting for Emmanuel now.
Awesome. Was there any indication of what Emmanuel wanted to talk about?
I think it was entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. Is there
any questions at all now? If you put them in the chat so we can have a look at them for the upcoming segment. And Emmanuel is here.
Awesome.
Just joining audio.
Hey, Emmanuel, how are you?
I'm good. You guys?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really good.
Really good. Good to finally meet you, man, because I know that we've talked quite a bit on LinkedIn.
So I came to ask you a question, and I kind of need to give you a bit of background before I ask you this.
Sure.
So I'm 16 years old. I'm in year 12, and throughout my life, I've never really known what I wanted to get into. So like I had friends who knew they wanted to be a lawyer, who wanted to be a doctor. But that being said, I never knew kind of what university I wanted to go to, what course I wanted to take, and what job I wanted to get. So now I'm in year 12, I'm faced with my UCAS application, and that's still the case. So, but I think I found like kind of haven in entrepreneurship, and I really want to pursue that. So that in mind, what would you do kind of in my shoes with regards to like choosing a uni course and then choosing kind of a job that might facilitate me getting like money, but won't kind of interfere with entrepreneurship? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does actually. That makes a lot of sense. First off, I think it's very powerful actually that you're so honest with yourself. Like not knowing that you're 100% certain what you want to do at uni is very powerful, because I think a lot of people make the mistake of choosing something very quickly because they know that there is pressure to choose. And I also love that you value entrepreneurship and you're thinking about that as a future point. What are your thoughts in there before I get started?
Yeah, so I just want to split my answer up into two ways. The first is about not knowing what you want to do, and the second is about entrepreneurship. So in terms of not knowing what you want to do, there's no silver bullet to kind of suddenly understand, oh my God, this is it. But it's more of a journey. So let me explain and break that down, because it sounds very generic right now. So when you're going through life and you're kind of making decisions, the process by which you reflect and self-reflect upon what you do and what you enjoy and what you love, that shortens your journey period of like, it might take you 15 years to discover what you really want to do. But if you're consistently self-reflecting and thinking about what it is that you really enjoyed as part of your day, this thing that you really liked, and picking out what you enjoyed and actively taking actions in order to maximize that in the future, that will shorten your journey time from 15 years to 5 years. So what I mean by that is, if you went to an internship and you hated it, some people will lie to themselves like, it's a job, I've worked hard, that kind of thing, I may as well take it. You will take longer to get to being happy because you settle for something that you knew deep down wasn't for you. But if you're active and honest with yourself, you realize it's not for you, you can then move your search somewhere else. You move that search, you go and search for the next thing, 3-4 years ahead of the old version of you, which wouldn't have done that. So the active self-reflection is what propels you and increases your velocity in that journey. Second thing about entrepreneurship. Nothing to hold you back in entrepreneurship. Like this idea that if you do one thing, doing another thing, like you won't be able to do it. It is your will and how much you want to do it. So even if you're at uni on a really tough course, setting up a side hustle on the weekends, dedicating one day, half a day to working on that, to learning, to collaborating with people, to, if you can't do it on your own, get 2 or 3 partners to help you out. That kind of entrepreneurship journey can be incredibly useful. And you can do it in any scenario. The key is to just set a deadline and just do something. That's the biggest takeaway, I think, in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and to add to that, me and Amir set up our first business when we were 19, and this is while we were at university. A lot of our friends have also become entrepreneurs while they've been at university. So don't worry about it as a thing of, oh, I need to be, have 100% of my time before I can set up my business. Like literally within the day after we first discussed the idea, we set up the company. Actually, like we registered it, we got moving. So a big thing that will be to your advantage is learning as you go. Don't feel as if, you need to have that, that idea completely fleshed out before you start moving. Is definitely a big part of it. And coming back to what Amir said, it's all about collecting as many experiences as you can, as early as you can, right? So my advice to you would be to talk to people who are studying different subjects at university that you're interested in studying, and that you're also good at and you enjoy, right? And talking to them to identify, am I interested in furthering my knowledge within this field? Does it sound enjoyable? Does uni sound like the option I want to go down? Why don't I also DM someone who's doing an apprenticeship, right? Like, or 2-3 different apprenticeships. Identify whether that might be something you might be interested in looking in. For the record, for everyone watching, when I was 14, I wanted to be a writer. Right? I was set on writing my own book. That was my plan. Then I got to 17 and I wanted to become an investment banker. And then I had some experience. And I was like, actually, I don't want to go into investment banking. Then I was setting on being a consultant. I did a year at IBM, had an incredible year, and I realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And finally, and hopefully forever, I plan on being an entrepreneur. So very, very important to go out there and get as many different experiences as possible. I always recommend, trying to get work experience and like virtual internships in many different industries, and you will in turn find out what you don't and do want.
I see. So yeah, that definitely helps. That definitely helps.
Go on.
At the crux of it, like, so when I choose my degree, it's to say if I do go to university, do I choose something? I know this is a question that comes up a lot, is do I choose something that I enjoy that opens less doors, or do I choose something that opens more doors but I might enjoy less? But like, and one consideration is that I know that kind of the career environment is shifting from like having a degree to kind of being genuine and having a personality and a skill set. So kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a really interesting one that you bring up. And I think to some degree, it's a bit of a false dichotomy. And it's this one where that trade-off that you mentioned, the opening doors versus enjoying, isn't necessarily, I think it's a trade-off that you need to calculate in slightly more detail. So what I mean by that is, when you think of that trade-off, when you think about closing doors that exist in a certain sphere you're talking about, what are your realistic doors that exist, and to what degree will they actually close? For example, if you want to go into finance or consulting, almost no matter what degree you do, those doors will never close depending on your degree choice. However, you want to go into medicine, many of those doors will close if you don't study medicine, right? So understanding the scope of what you're talking about when you say that, like, is incredibly important. So I think it's, again, self-reflection in this question. What realistically could I possibly want to do? And to what degree does that reduce and dampen if I pick certain options? Most of the time, unless it's a very specific like medicine or dentistry, your degree doesn't really matter. Unless you want to go into something like computing, any STEM subject you can kind of study and later on go and become a programmer. So, again, many doors remain open. It's just, where is that scope for you?
I couldn't have said that better.
yeah, precisely. I think I just don't know what closes what doors and what doors just don't close, I guess.
So as Amir mentioned, right, like a lot of the investment banks, a lot of like the finance firms, generally speaking, the ones like the highest tier ones don't actually care what degree you take. They care more about you as an individual and your like achievement within that. So that's why you see a lot of people who had like study like psychology or philosophy or like PPE, like loads and loads of different subjects, maths, all being able to apply to those top firms.
Can I just interject here, Azhar? So you said the phrase, there's stuff that I don't know, Again, it comes to this kind of principle of being able to like really back yourself and self-reflect. So thinking about, first of all, what could I want to do? And then think, okay, what knowledge do I really lack and how can I get it? It's not, I don't know this, it's like, how can I know this, right? That kind of framing and mindset change needs to occur. So it's like, if there's stuff you don't know, who can you message? Who can you ask? Are there teachers who are going to know? Can you look online? Can you look at videos, Establish the scope on which you want to get that knowledge and then go ahead and get it. If there's 5 bits of things that you're thinking about, do half an hour's worth of research on each and every single one of them, but be quite systematic in your planning and your thinking, and it will kind of get you there. Do you see what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, definitely.
And lastly, identify what you don't want to do, because that will make stuff easier. Like if you are like, there's so much I could do, I could be like, okay, I definitely don't want to become a doctor, for example, or like a physician. I definitely, and like when you cut those things down, you end up with like a diagram of all the things that you are interested in doing. And then it's much, much easier to analyze that and self-reflect on that.
Okay. Thank you for the advice.
Is there anything else? Anything else you want to follow up on?
No, not really, no. I think that answers my question.
Was that helpful? Or?
Definitely helpful. Yeah.
All right. Awesome, Emmanuel. I'll catch you in a little bit and hopefully see you soon.
See you, man.
Bye.
All right, awesome. So in this little segment, we're going to be answering some of your questions in the chat. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to kind of plop them in the chat as soon as possible, and we'll get around to as many of them as we can. Cool. So Azhar, Hannah M has asked, thanks for the live stream. Do you have any tips for time management and staying productive, especially during exam time?
Okay. So time management, right? This is probably the first thing I do is identify where you're going wrong. So what I'd like you to do is to look at the previous few days, within which you've been working on whatever you've been working on, and identify how many of your hours have been spent on that. So for example, if I had an exam in 3 days time and I'm worrying about my revision, and I analyze my day and I'm like, actually, I spent 4 hours revising, I actually spent 5 hours with my friends, or I spend like 7 hours unaccounted for just on YouTube and surfing the internet, then you realize that you can monitor and track how those hours improve over time. So I think it's very important to track how many hours you're doing daily and analyze where your time is being lost is the first thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely want to echo, analyzing, you think about where your time was lost and where you need to focus on. It is incredibly important for time management. I think there are 2 ways, step 1, step 2. Step 1, identify what level of time management you want. And this is really important because some people in their life love control and some people hate it, right? Now, for me, I love being, because I have quite a sporadic personality, I know that I need a large level of control. Other people, they want a very minimalistic kind of, just a skeleton of their day. So now we want to step 2, is kind of, okay, how do you actually do it? So if you want a really detailed approach, this is how I do it. So we kind of plan every single thing that we generally want to do on a weekly basis. So we think, okay, the weekly tasks will be X, Y, Z. I mean, like a big list of them. Then in brackets, I estimate the number of hours that I think each task is going to take me on a week-by-week basis. Then I multiply by 20% increase, just in case, because stuff pops up. I've got those hours. I put them into my Google Calendar and I have it repeat on a weekly basis. So I know when I'm going to do stuff and kind of when that timing is going to happen. So I have that all in my calendar. Then I can see all my spare time. So I wake up in the morning. And so what happens now is I've got my weekly tasks done, but I don't have my sporadic tasks. Sporadic tasks are things that happen to pop up out of nowhere. I wake up at 8:30 in the morning and I put down for that day all those sporadic tasks, things I just have to do that day, and I put them into my schedule. And again, I leave a couple of hours, an hour or 2 free because things overrun. And then I clock off at like 5 or 6 and I have the end of day and I have my entire day planned out. But that's a lot of structure. And if you like that, that's going to be amazing. But if you don't like that, it might be kind of tough for you. I might want to take a different approach.
So to clarify, one thing that in Amir's approach works really well is at the start of every single day, he identifies what he wants to get done in that day. He schedules specific times within which he plans on getting those things done, and he estimates how long those things will take. So the issue that people find with time management, right, is they get to the end of the day and they're like, oh, I didn't get anything done, like that's a big issue. But if Amir has planned to do something, a task between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m., and it's now 3 p.m. and he hasn't got it done, he immediately knows now that he's behind on his tasks, and he knows that he needs to fix up on his time management. So you have that immediate feedback loop of whether or not you're on track. And another one is, if you're struggling to stay productive, make sure that your hardest task or your most important task is the one that you do straight away, first in the day, right? While you've got that willpower. Yep.
Absolutely. If there are any follow-ups, Hannah, do let us know in the comments. Ira, in terms of consulting case, I think somebody's coming on to ask about consulting, so we'll cover that when we kind of get to it. I think Junior's asked, have you ever doubted that building a company is something that would make you content?
Ooh, that's a quality question. Okay.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things I want to clarify here. Being an entrepreneur for the sake of being an entrepreneur is like the dumbest thing that anyone can do, right? Like, I think a lot of people, and I think Gary Vee, if you follow him, talks a lot about this, right? People become so attracted to the lifestyle that entrepreneurs live, right? And they want that autonomy that they decide to become entrepreneurs. And what that can lead to a lot of the time is a lot of like, you know, like false hope, for example, or people who maybe aren't cut out for that going into it. So what I mean by that is it's very important to understand that you want to be an entrepreneur because you want that autonomy, all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's very important to know why that's the case, in terms of, do you have like an idea or like a passion that you really want to share with everyone and have an impact in? And I think if you don't have that passion and you just want to build something for the sake of building something, like an app, for example, I hear a lot of people saying that, I think then there's a lot of doubt, because when it gets hard, you'll question whether or not it's worth staying true to the cause.
Yeah, I think this applies to everything. I think identifying what you love and what you really enjoy and what drives you and what energizes you is super important. And try and find a career or never stop searching till you find a thing that you think you really love or energizes you, because too many people settle for something they don't love. Let me just pick up on this thing about energizing. I love math, for example. If I go into a math lecture, if I go to 5 hours worth of them, I will come out being like, oh, okay, that was so long. A thing that energizes you, you can do 5 hours of it and you come out being like pumped and ready to go because you love doing it. And when things naturally drain you in the day, you need those things that energize you. Try and self-reflect and identify what truly energizes me. So personally, it's people interaction. I love speaking with people. I love interacting with individuals, and that brings me so much joy in the day. And I think that's why I try and maximize.
Yeah, I couldn't echo that more. Likewise with me as well. And I think lastly, like there will be times sometimes when you doubt yourself as any entrepreneur. But I think that when you have that passion and you're doing something you really care about, then that enables you to find that self-belief and drive through. So like myself and Amir, right? We are working on education and access to education, which is something we're deeply passionate about. So when the going gets hard, or we know that we're still like trying to become on a larger scale, for example, that passion pushes us through the doubt.
Yeah, definitely. I think somebody once mentioned to me she used to have a vision board up on her wall that symbolized why she wanted to get it, where she wanted to get to. I think she wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge. She had like the pictures on the wall, kind of like the images and the representation of what that would mean to her, so that there was emotion in that and kind of like in wanting to get there. So every day when things got tough and she woke up, she saw that and it reminded her of why she was doing what she was doing. Awesome. I think we've got about a minute left, so I'll pick on Rohan's question. For fields such as consulting and similar roles, there is diversity, but common excellence among successful applications. How can you prepare experience-wise to attain your dream analyst role? You've got about a minute left to answer this question, Azhar, did say.
Wait, could you repeat that one, Amir?
Essentially, how can you obtain your dream role?
How can you obtain your dream role? So I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is to identify what that dream role is, which comes back to a lot of what we discussed with Emmanuel earlier. The next way, I think, really underrated tip here, if I say so myself, find people who have done it before. Find them on LinkedIn, people who have replicated the excellence or the achievements that you're looking for. talk to them, make like a big list of all of the different types of achievements that these successful applicants have, and try and tick off as many as possible that you feel that you would enjoy and are available to you now. And yeah, that's probably the biggest piece of advice I'd give. Like, I got in contact with loads and loads of successful entrepreneurs to find out how they did it before I ever even became one, for example. Before becoming a consultant at IBM, I talked to several consultants at IBM to understand, how they stood out in their interview process and their different achievements as well.
Yep. If I was going to say one thing, and I only have no time to say it, what I would suggest is find a group who do what you do and love what you do and will have similar goals, and make sure you discuss with them every time and push each other forward. Find other people to keep you going when you can't always be the one who keeps you going. That's my main content. Okay, cool. Azhar, who are we expecting now?
Shivangi, I'm just admitting her to the room.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, there she is. I was just spamming that button for a second.
Hey, Shivangi, can you hear us?
Hi, Amir. Hi, Azhar. I can hear you. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you though.
Okay. How about now?
Yep, there you are.
All good.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in India right now. It's very hot. Yeah, in lockdown. So yeah, it's good and bad both. Yeah, I don't know. Really occupied with work though. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine being in India right now with the heat, honestly.
So, Shivangi, what did you wanna talk about?
My main question is how to tell a story through your CV, be it any profile, along with having, so I have earlier applied with good success in India through my CV, and now how to create a CV that is that goes through a global ATS, that works in the US, UK, EU, so that you don't have to make major changes while you're applying to various jobs. And another important thing is how to change your CV in order to apply for jobs for which you don't have experience, but you're confident enough that you have the skills for those. Like I'm a salesperson, but I'm doing my MBA right now, and I'm very confident that I'll be very good at consulting. But only because your CV is not going through the ATS because of certain reasons, the lack of experience, how to successfully apply to jobs that are good for you, but your CV is not able to reflect potential for those jobs.
Azhar, do you want to bring up Shivangi's CV so we can have a quick look?
Yeah, just 1 second. It seems to not be displaying properly. Shivangi, is there any chance that you could share your CV with us?
Okay, I'll try. Yeah.
If I can get hold of it. While you do that, we'll just try answering a question.
Yeah.
The ATS, what generally looks for is it looks for keywords. So how I tailor when I apply to different roles is I look up the kind of companies that I want to work for. So I look into the industry and I look at, like 5 or 6 companies I'm interested in working for. I read their role descriptions, and then what I do is I make a list of all the keywords within there. So for example, within sales, you got like prospecting, qualifying, lead generation, all of that kind of stuff. So to make as many of those keywords and then put those in your CV. Whereas you can do the same thing for loads of different roles that you're applying for, is find the keywords and then put those keywords into your CV.
That's what I do currently.
The second tip is collate a list of all of the main attributes that these roles are looking for. So, and then what I want you to do is I want you to tick off each of these attributes, like where you think you've demonstrated it within your CV and which ones you don't think you have, right? So if you're applying for product management, look at, Google's product management role, look at, Amazon's product management role, for example, and tick off where you think within your CV you've answered those role descriptions, and apply when you feel like you've answered as many as you can.
Yeah.
So
can you see my CV though?
Yes. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so as this is like, as you've got background in sales, like I've got quite a bit of feedback for this one. So off the bat, I'd like to say I really do like your wording at the beginning. It's very succinct when you talk about 4 years of industry experience, sales management, all of that kind of stuff. I do like that. One thing though that I'd say straight off the bat though is there's too much text on your CV. Like you really you want to do two things. The first thing is you want to significantly reduce the length of each bullet point. Like if you can get that, like remove all information that is more descriptive than it is value. So what I mean by that is like your first bullet point, right? Execute the development and sales of computer software and cloud products. I would just simply go executed the sales of, and then mention how much you did in sales. And mention the rough size of those clients across enterprise accounts, across a portfolio of this big enterprise accounts. You don't need to mention that it was about the hiring requirements. You don't need to mention the industry verticals. The next one is the next bullet point is you want to mention more about the value that you added here. So this one is a very descriptive bullet point. So you want to mention the value. So for example, how much revenue generation did this lead to, for example? That'll be really useful to talk about. Additionally, in the third bullet point, you don't need to give as much information as you're giving in regards to like the eHire recruitment app. So you can really shorten this in terms of how did your market research improve user acquisition or like increase subscription renewals by 25% in previous years to 40% this year?
Yeah, the kind of I might say something like you spearheaded the new marketing campaign, which led to X percentage increase in this. That kind of wording,
Yeah, like
I've kind of done that for my previous experience, kind of. I get the point. Yeah,
I mean, there's a difference in saying you implemented or you kind of led or you suggested new improvements, rather you were the leader, or you spearheaded something. Kind of the specific wording you choose, again, it comes to that ATS is kind of it affects a few things.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to add is, generally speaking, throughout the first half of your CV, you've used quite a good amount of quantifying your numbers. Like I see you've got like improved transactions by 30%, 15.4%. One of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, right now, why you might find it difficult to get through CV screening is because there's simply too much detail here. Like, as Amir mentioned, you really want to make it as succinct as possible, like a line and a half kind of thing. So removing that level of descriptiveness that doesn't add value is really important. One thing I want to add is being very clear on the value as well. So when you mentioned that you were closely linked with revenue generation of 50 million rupees, my first question is, what does that mean? Like, what was your direct contribution to increasing that 50 million? Like, how did you do that? Because even if that number was like 2 billion, for example, you saying that you're closely linked doesn't necessarily mean that you close the deals, for example. So definitely very important in exactly how you did it.
These were my direct accounts. Like I was the only one working on these accounts. So how should I probably put that across?
So you can mention that you were the account manager to show the level of responsibility that you had. Instead of mentioning that that you were in the US, the UK, the EU, just mention that the international clients. I would further mention the rough size of these accounts in general to show, so that they know that you can handle big accounts, basically. yeah, so those are the tips I'd give you there. I would say in the interest of time, I'd say similar, in terms of descriptive stuff and reducing the amount of description in the second work experience part as well. Try and make sure that you're not talking about too many different things or too many different roles. So just mention, I did this one thing which led to a quantifiable outcome of this while working in this field, and that's it. Whereas if you mention 3 or 4 things, chances are you need to cut those down and have like a few more bullet points. My personal opinion, but I know I'm just throwing stuff at you. It's because it's a sales CV, and I do love a good sales CV. I personally wouldn't bold anything in the CV. I personally wouldn't bold anything in the CV. Just because you want them to identify themselves, as opposed to you trying to draw attention to it. Amir, if you scroll down. Oh, sorry, Shivangi, if you scroll down. Further down. Okay, so the last thing I'd like to add is in your final work experience, I think you could quantify a little bit more with numbers. Like what you did really well at the start, right? I love this, is used a lot of quantifying with numbers and values. But in this part of the CV, I think it's a lot vaguer in terms of the outcomes you achieved. Yeah, that's the last thing I'd say.
All right. And the second question, just in brief, if I can understand, like how to, like if it's something very different from what your CV is, and you just want to give it a shot to that role, what is still the best way to, go for it? It's like, is it consistent to, putting the keywords and trying to find the value, like product development value? I mean, I can like introduce new products, for example, is a small part of product development. So am I right in doing this when I am applying to different roles, or how is the case? Or is there a huge blunder? That's all.
Really quickly, and I'm sure Amir will have a bit more to add as well. In regards to when you're applying to different roles, as we mentioned, right here in the CV, you're talking through a lot of different things. So when you cut that down significantly, there's a lot of things in your CV that you did in your work experience that you don't have words to include. Therefore, when you're applying to specific roles in consulting, for example, again, look through the attributes that they're looking for and the keywords they're looking for, and change what you include in your CV based on what they're looking for. So if, for example, I always use project management, for example. If they're looking for project management skills, the fact that you led teams and you were able to meet deadlines is much more important than the introduction of new products. So you can basically decide and change what you include based on that.
Yeah, again, we do have to cut this short, but just very quickly, in terms of new stuff, I think the fact that you're doing an MBA, incredibly useful, means you can apply to a lot of different things. That is a great transition period in which you can genuinely apply to lots of new places, and it's not like a weird thing to do. As I said, do adjust your CV, speak to people who in that career, what they actually do on a day-to-day basis, and see how much of those skills are transferable, because
that's what I'm doing.
In that cover letter, you can kind of explain that and explain why you want to make the transition and why, based on your previous experience, you'd be a really good fit for that firm and the value you can add to them. So, when you make those applications, make that very, very clear. And as you're going through that process, during the interviews as well, knowing what they want and what they want from people to add value and making sure you can deliver that.
Yeah.
Hopefully we haven't thrown too much at you.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. Pleasure to have you on the show, Shivangi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this initiative. Thank you.
No worries. Always happy to help. What I'll do now, Amir, is I'll let Arena in. She's been patiently waiting. I'm actually sweating from the the time management of the call.
Hey, Arena, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Let's jump straight into it. What's your question about?
So I'm a second year, just to give some context, I'm a second year student studying at Delhi University Lady Shri Ram College. I'm doing statistics honors, and in the upcoming year, hopefully pretty soon, I'll be sitting for my placements, mostly at consulting firms. So I kind of wanted an idea on how to actually begin prepping for the case studies bit of it and kind of acing the interviews. So that's like a little brief of what I'd like to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have so much to say here, and if you have any additional follow-up questions, message me on LinkedIn because it's very hard to fit in 5 to 7 minutes. But very basically, if you've never done case consulting interview before, how I'd approach it is I would first of all look at some of the basic resources online. Look at your case, your case in point, your Victor Cheng's, for example. Then don't use this as gospel. Use them as an introduction to case interviews. Just kind of wrap your head around it. What is it? How does it work? Then what I would do is kind of think of your own unique way of trying to solve these cases and your own approach to them. Do not use the cookie cutter approach that they mentioned, because if that worked, everyone would get in, right? Like, there has to be some level of independent thinking. If you're using cookie cutter approach, they will know it, because they try and throw these curveballs at you, these weird cases that you can't just apply people will say like frameworks, like a profit and loss framework. If you apply it in a scenario it doesn't work, they're gonna know that. So that's the biggest thing I want to say. For me, in my case consulting interviews, I never use a single framework. People can use them, but for me and myself, I never I never ever use the framework itself. Additionally, what I would say is getting someone to practice with is so important. Make sure you have a case study buddy or like a group of them and start practicing with them. I wouldn't say over practice, but maybe at least 5 to 20 cases you want to be practicing with them, getting feedback, because there are little things that you do and little mistakes you make, and you want to be able to clarify those.
Okay, just to follow up on the practice bit, you mentioned on practice, and obviously I've heard that you should get enough practice. So maybe either like a timeline of how before the interview should I begin, like what time? I mean, about like, I know everyone has a different pace. So maybe you could tell me how much should I practice, like if you could quantify it somehow.
So I think it's a level of understanding as opposed to practice. I wouldn't put a numerical number on it, but here's how I think about it. A couple of key concepts. First of all, you want to be practicing on a regular basis, so maybe once, twice a week. Secondly, you want to be self-reflecting after all that, what went well in the case, what didn't go well. Thirdly, you want to be really careful of echo chambers. So this is what I mean. You're practicing with a group of your 3 or 4 friends. You're all making the same mistake, but none of you have realized. And therefore, your practice is detrimental because you are reinforcing the same mistake amongst yourselves, right? So make sure you have a mechanism by which when you practice, you get external advice. You message someone on LinkedIn or someone who's done it before, or you look up videos of proper consultants doing it and seeing how they're doing it. So it's kind of the way you practice, I think, is more important than the number of practice you do. People often over practice and they reinforce their bad habits, and that's why they've done 100 cases, they never get in. So it's more about the way you approach it, which is really fundamental. So I think I personally did, only 8 cases in total, maybe 9. But I think up to 20 is like a good number. I would make sure to try and get that expert advice and feedback at some point. Maybe there's people like alumni from your college, maybe there's something like that. There are books, videos online. Try and get as much information as possible in that sense.
Okay.
And I would begin, I think on YouTube, there are quite a few good case study examples at firms like McKinsey, Bain, BCG. So I definitely have a look at those examples to see someone else answering the type of questions. Even before you start looking at, the frameworks or try answering questions, is look at what a successful applicant looks like in terms of the way they think about it. And that'll be really helpful. Additionally, Amir and I have a consulting case study buddies group. So if you join that and you connect with other individuals in your locality you're interested in, going for case consulting, you can all work together with one another and make sure that you all bring each other up.
Oh, also, I have a more detailed guide on consulting interviews. So if you want that, send me a PM and I'll be able to get that through, because it's very specific. I have not mentioned here because it's too much detail. But once you get to the interviews, it will be super useful.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for that. I think that was basically the kind of gist I wanted to get into it, get started with the prepping bit of it. And any like other tips for the general interview, like other than the case solving bit for the HR interview?
This will vary firm to firm, so that it'll be completely specific to the firm. So it's very different.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a big one for me.
Oh no, my internet's gone.
Oh no. I think a big one for me in terms of general interview tips is to showcase your personality. So this is like a very, very general one, is, you know, like when you walk into the room and very much everyone's like, oh, how's your day been, kind of thing. And you're like, good. Or like talk about the traffic or something like that. Well, not so much now, right? Like genuinely speak about yourself and make real conversation with the interviewer. One thing I always think about is it's very important to build a human connection within the interview. So a lot of my, this is less for consulting, but a lot of my interviews, I always ask them about their own journeys and, you know, about what they enjoy most about the role. And that means that, you know, they much better enjoy the conversation that they're having.
Okay.
I think
Thanks
Amir's
for that.
internet is cut out, so
Yep.
I'll continue. Pleasure to have you on the show, Arena. And yeah, do PM us if you have any other questions.
Yep, sure. Just to add a little bit. I mean, I really like the content that you guys post. It's actual stuff that you don't actually end up thinking about, but when it's out there in text, you're like, oh yeah, like I should have thought of that. Why didn't that strike me? So obvious stuff that should strike you, but like it's like in the intricacies of it.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that. Let me just try and figure. Oh, Amir's back.
Sorry, my internet just dropped there.
Yep. So yeah, definitely do connect with us. We will love to help in any way we can. And yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Awesome.
So we just got Vandana joining now. Amir?
Awesome, cool.
Hey Vandana, can you hear us?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good too, thank you. So my question is around personal branding. I'd like to provide this background. So I'm currently a student at the University of Manchester, and I'm going to be a placement intern this coming July. And apart from that, I'm also a founder at Rebrand Me, which is a pro bono marketing agency, and it has been designed to help students on campus gain an insight into marketing. So, I want to build my personal brand because I want to gain more visibility on LinkedIn, specifically among recruiters. But I also want to leverage that into my pro bono marketing agency that I just mentioned. So currently I'm struggling a bit with the content that I put out. So my first question is, how do you constantly come up with content? Because I think I find it a bit difficult to come up with content every day.
I love this question because a couple of ways, and as I inject here, the first, very simple, a lot of people do this, they keep a little, like every time an idea comes to your head, you put a little note that describes it, and you can come back to that later. Really simple way, obvious stuff. Second, this is what really I think is really powerful. I call it a DM strategy. So what you do is one of your call to action. So what you say at the end of your post is, DM me for more information, DM me for more specific content. People will ask you their specific questions, and then those questions, the answers you have to those questions, you take them and you make them into posts in them themselves. So the reason why it's really smart is because it's the kind of thing, you're sitting in class, right? You put your hand up, you're scared. Does anyone else have this question? Chances are, if one person's asking it in your audience, a lot of the rest of your audience wants to know that as well. So you know directly that the post you're making has value to the audience, your target audience. So that's one really powerful technique that we picked up. As I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions as well. So another one is I get messages sometimes about individuals, you know, they're using all the techniques we mentioned, the hashtags, all of that, the catchy line, but they don't seem to be getting engagement, right? And a lot of that is because of the concept of value, and that their posts specifically are not providing anyone else with direct value. Yeah. So before you make a post, something that I think is an interesting framework to start with is to think about who are you directly trying to get to like or comment on your post?
Yeah.
And what do you think they would and would not react to, right? So if you go, hey everyone, organizing a pro bono event, tune in, chances are only your friends and people at the Pro Bono Society are going to like that, because they're the ones that know you and the ones that are interested, right? So that approach isn't going to work to get like a huge post or to get people who don't know you to like that. But if you start with something, for example, about this is how I started my own pro bono agency, or, you know, this is how we tackle one of the biggest issues in pro bono consulting, for example. Now I might read. Go on, man.
Or like, here, if you want to create your own agency, here are 3 tips. Or if you want to get into marketing, here are things that you need to know. Stuff that you think your audience, the target audience wants to hear, but also is directly helping them.
Okay.
Yeah. Another one is, you know, I get another DM, which is, I am putting out valuable content, but I just don't seem to be getting interaction, right? So this is a classic one. So what I did here when I first started was I contacted people who I thought were my target market, and I asked them specifically, did they get any value from my posts?
Okay.
Right? And I did that from people who, you know, weren't my friends and family and were going to like lie to me. And I asked them, you know, what do you enjoy? What do you want to see more of?
Yeah.
And then I started replicating that content. But at the same time, be very aware that, you know, you're not just creating content that other people want to see. There's that balance of, you know, you enjoying that content and having a personal touch.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And another one with consistency, have a time every day, or like a rough time within which you post every single day.
Yeah.
So this varies on 2 things. The first thing it varies on is, when do you get time where you're not going to get distracted to post?
Yeah.
So I post, like, I have this time at like 12:30 every day where like I generate something. I know I haven't been posting recently, like don't kill me in the comments. And the other thing is, what is your audience? So because Amir's audience is international, for example, it doesn't matter what time he posts really, because either someone in the USA is going to like it or someone in India is going to like it. Whereas if your audience is specific to your locality, then you want to post at a time within which you think most people would be online to view your posts. And one last thing to add, try and tag people or collaborate with people who also have followings and will be interested in what you're interested in. Because you gain access to their followings. Amir, is this the last call?
This is, yes.
In which case, one thing I'd love to do is, following last week's episode, we actually had a few of the individuals who live streamed post some really good content on LinkedIn, and that actually exploded. So I would love to show you why it worked the way it worked. And also just to celebrate the achievement of individuals, you know, who did really well. So this is Emmanuel. Shout out to you, man. You were literally on the show like 20 minutes ago. First thing that he did was a very catchy heading, right? So he knows his target market are interested in CV advice, interview advice, that kind of thing. Next thing he did was he tagged both of us, right? So that meant a lot of people who are in our audience were able to view this, right? Then he segmented his takeaways very, very clearly. You know, CV advice, LinkedIn tips, interview advice. So it's very well structured, and I also love the emojis. Lastly, he had a call to action. Now, the reason why call to action is really important is because every time someone comments on your post, it means that everyone in their network, or more people in their network, start to see it. If he hadn't done that, I bet you he would have had like 3 or 4 comments, but he got 18, and that meant that he got a lot more likes. And now someone who doesn't have, he actually got more likes on this post than he has followers, right? That's how powerful his post was and how well he utilized the formula. So that's one example of, you know, exactly how to go about it.
I was just watching this one as well. It's really, really well structured. So my second question is, like you said, you know, coming up with content that you relate with, but also your audience relates with. So like sort of finding that story in that content, and also thinking about how your audience would relate to that.
Yeah, great question. I'm going to answer this one with an example as well, right? Some of the best content out there are personal stories about you. So what you do is you talk about one of your personal experiences and you tie that in with what you want your audience to feel or like what your message is. So, you know, that's why I applied to 100 internships, I got 2, and now I'm successful. It's so powerful because everyone's like, I relate to, you know, struggle of applying. I love the positive message that, you know, people have left with. Amir, have you got Shivam's LinkedIn that I sent through?
Yeah, give me a second. I can get it out.
Yeah. So I received a DM actually from someone who'd been following me for quite a while, going, "Hey man, I've got my own story about, you know, coronavirus and, you know, internships. I'm not sure if I should post it, right?"
Okay.
And I was like, no, bro, you need to post it. Like, don't worry about the outcome or likes. It's about your story. We structured it in, you know, the exact same format I mentioned with Emmanuel. And
so, what's his name?
Shivam.
Shivam Goyal.
No, I tell you what, I'll get out.
Sure.
Give me one
second. Sorry, yeah. I got the same DM. Somebody messaged me like, you know, it's a story I should share. I'm not sure. If you're unsure about sharing your story, just go ahead and share it. If you're not sure people are gonna like that content, use quantity, figure out what quality is. You know, post as much as you want to, and then figure out what gets a good response and use that to see what's good. We'll run a couple of minutes over, but Azhar, if you could bring it up.
Yep. So just before I finish, like expecting to get 100 likes on your first post is like going to the gym one time and expecting to like make serious like improvements. So don't worry about that. This is the post that Shivam got into contact with me about.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, he was like, chance to change with COVID-19, you know? So straight away, it's a positivity, it's a positivity post. He goes deep into his own story, you know, which is really interesting, and how important it was for him and, you know, the struggle. And at the end, you know, he has this positive message that he wants to add, and he's got his 3 hashtags, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that it would have been even better if he'd gone, you know, DM, like comment below how a positive story that you had yourself, for example, or like your own experiences. So there's a call to action. But, you know, he ended up getting, you know, 76 likes and quite a lot of interaction here. So yeah, another way within which he could follow on building his network is if he had time, I would suggest he adds all of the people who have liked his content, because they're likely to like more of his content in future. And I would also suggest that he responds to all of his comments, because when he responds, the LinkedIn algorithm is going, okay, loads of people are talking about this. Let me show this to more people, right? So yeah, that's the examples.
In the last minute, I don't know if I have any follow-up questions there.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like you mentioned, like you hold yourself back sort of thinking about, you know, the interactions that you will get, and you're like, I might not post it because maybe like the story is not, you know, as important, or maybe it's like, you know, you're not that successful to post your story. So I think sometimes that's something that can hold you back to post some content out.
Yeah, one last thing I want to say, because I know we're going over, right? This is one of my personal philosophies in life, right? I always think, if I don't post, if I don't take an action, what are the consequences? And if I do take an action, what are the benefits I'm losing, right? So you could be the next, I don't know, like the next like biggest content creator on LinkedIn for all we know, right? With like millions of views, but you'll never know that unless you try, right? And in the same way, I think Amir's dropped off. You'll never know that unless you try. In the same way that, you know, you might work at one of the best firms in the world, but because you're not sure if you get rejected, you don't apply, right? So always think about the positives and think of it as, you know, oh, I got 3 people who I don't know are interested in my story in those 3 likes, as opposed to, oh, I didn't get 100. And slowly build up over time, add those people always to your network, and then, you know, the rest is just magic. Right? Like we all started with like 0 followers.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Awesome. For everyone listening, if you want to come on the show in the future, send us a DM on LinkedIn, and it will be hopefully able to have as many of you as possible. If any of you found it really, really useful, make a post like Emmanuel did in the past, and a few others, Muhammad have found as well. And hopefully that post will blow up, and it can be your first post if you haven't posted before. Any final words, Azhar?
Yeah, like I really do love like celebrating the success of all of you. Biggest thing is take action immediately. So obviously I'm going to say subscribe, but equally, you know, like one of the best ways to learn is through experience. So, you know, take those actions right now, whatever that might be, learn from it, self-reflect, improve.
Awesome. See you all next week.
See you.